Thanks everybody for making it. I know there's a lot of stuff to do at MAGFest, and I really appreciate you spending the time here with me for this panel. About retro game collecting. I did prepare some content, just some slides, and I'm totally happy to stick with that. But ultimately, I look at this as being about you guys and what you want to learn about the hobby, and I don't really know anything about you. So I want to make sure we leave a lot of time for interaction. Make sure that Spider-Man gives you your raffle ticket, because if you stay to the end, you could win this fancy Ridley amiibo. And I brought some games. I have some spare stuff. If anybody's into trading and those sorts of things, we can talk after. No Wonder Swan. Definitely not anything that crazy. Mostly just fun, common stuff. Anyway, this is my information if you want to follow up with me after the panel. And I'll show this stuff again when we're through, but I want to get to the content. So who am I? I'm nobody special. I just like video games. I've been playing video games for a long, long time. I've been collecting them for a long time. I have a very big collection, but I make it a point to not spend too much on it. I mean, I'm a pretty average person when it comes to my job, my income, things like that. I'm 35, I have a mortgage, you know, a lot of things that a lot of people do. And I can't go out and spend, you know, $500 on Panzer Dragoon Saga every day. So, you know, in 1997, I just for some reason or another, I wanted to get a NES again. And this kid across the street from me had one with like 20 games for like 10 bucks. And so I bought it and I started messing with it. And of course, everybody was on to N64 and PlayStation, and nobody cared about NES then. And everyone just thought it was crazy that anyone would want to play this stuff. And it was good for me at the time, or now, but at the time it was looked at very differently. So anyway, the collection, I probably have about 3,000 games right now, dozens of systems, a lot of dupes, all sorts of stuff. And I sort of buy, sell, and trade. And sometimes I make money on it, but to tell you the truth, I don't really think it's a, we'll talk about this a little bit, I don't really think it's a great way to make money. So if anyone thinks that this is about, you know, I'm gonna make my riches off video games, I think that's a really bad way to look at it. So. Sometimes I stream on Twitch, not just retro games. I'm the Walrus 610. Check me out. This is some of what I have. I don't know if you can see it all. This is one side of the wall. This is a little bedroom. I used to have a roommate, and I rented it to him. And now I have a new roommate. And anyway, that's just one side of it. And I've got other stuff too. You know, all sorts of systems. I like my Neo Geo stuff. You can see my Neo Nook. And well, I mean, I did, but but the truth is that I try to keep it manageable, and that's what we're going to talk about. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit today about goals and valuing things and what things mean to you too. I think it's a really important concept in game collecting. So, for today's agenda, I'm just going to talk about like why you should or should not collect games. You know, I want to get out of some misconceptions about what you're doing, and I want to talk about the basic principle of coming up with a collecting strategy. Donnie, don't, do's with knife safety, and Q&A. I want to leave a lot of time for interaction with the audience. So just brief outline, just in my opinion, and you know, nobody should really tell you how to enjoy yourself. You know, don't let anyone yuck your yum, so to speak. But these are the things I look at in terms of why you should or should not collect games. So if you really have nostalgia and you want to seek the original experience, you know, retro games are really good for you. If you don't mind the chores, like for me, it's kind of zen to get out a bottle of rubbing alcohol and clean a bunch of games off and stuff like that, or fix up a system. I mean, there can be some pleasure in that. I know that might seem odd for some people, but if you're into retro games, you sort of learn to enjoy those sorts of things, the cataloging, etc. I like video game collecting as opposed to toy collecting because you can actually play with the stuff unless you're a sealed collector. You know, it's pretty nice when I can take out a game that, yeah, I spent a lot of money on it, it's worth a lot of money, but I don't feel bad booting it up. I mean, you should play, if you have open games, you should play them because you don't know how long they're gonna last. If you're any kind of creative or tinker type, if you like opening up things and fixing them and doing all sorts of neat stuff like that, I think it's a great hobby for that. There's a lot of fun repairs and mods you can do, and you don't have to be particularly skilled or educated. Anybody can pick this up and do it and have a good time. And you have to enjoy the hunt of it. Like, a lot of retro game collecting isn't always about great finds and things like that. A lot of this is about failure. You know, you're gonna go out some days and you're just not gonna find the thing you've been looking for. So it really helps to enjoy the process and say, well, I'm gonna go out this morning and I'm gonna look for games for all day, and I might only find a few things, but it was fun. The process was fun. I like going out. I like meeting people. I have some stories to tell, that sort of stuff. If all you want to do is play old games, like I want to play Sega Genesis games, or I want to play anything really, I don't think retro game collecting is the right approach. I think the right approach is to use emulation typically, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. If you think this is some kind of nest egg, or that this is going to be some great way to make money, I mean, I don't think that's a great way to look at it. Yes, you might be able to turn it into money at some point, or if you decide to get out of the hobby, maybe get some money back. But I don't think it's like this retirement plan. So the way I look at it is the money I put into the hobby is money that I'm okay about losing. And if you get frustrated when things break, you shouldn't get into retro game collecting, because things break a lot. Does anybody have a water or something?
There's water here.
Oh, okay. I'll grab it in a second. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. So, if you just want to play old games, don't buy the PlayStation Classic, even at $60. I would say this is sort of my precursor to everything with retro game collecting. Emulation is really, really good. And yes, if you're going to be at AGDQ this week, you're doing speedrunning, you're going to use original hardware for the perfect experience. But if all you want to do is play Link to the Past on SNES, there are so many good ways of doing this without getting into anything complicated. It's a great day to play these games. I mean, you can, any computer, any computing device can play an emulator of Link to the Past acceptably. It's maybe not legal to spend $100 on a Raspberry Pi kit and load it with all sorts of ROMs that you could download off the internet, and that certainly wouldn't be legal, and it's certainly not something I would do or recommend to any of you. Wink, wink, wink. But, you know, I guess you could. Anyway, another thing you could do is flash cartridges. Anybody in the room familiar with like flash cards, EverDrives, things like that? They're really cool. I have a bunch myself for games that I will never buy. And they're awesome. I mean, you could buy a Sega Genesis for like 20 bucks, easy, and a flash cartridge, a Mega EverDrive, and the right kind of hookups, and you could play anything you want on Genesis and Master System and be good to go and have an original hardware experience. And there's a lot to be said for that. We're going to do Q&A at the end, but if you have like a clarification thing, you can ask. I mean.
That's fine. I'll wait for you.
All right, great. And then lastly, I want to bring up like digital downloads. By the way, Spider-Man is making one last round for raffle tickets for the Ridley Amiibo. Yes, thank you, Spider-Man. We appreciate you removing your mask for this important panel. Yes, if you haven't gotten a raffle ticket, please make sure to see Spider-Man so that you can get a raffle ticket. And at the end, somebody will get this lovely Ridley Amiibo. You can cuddle up with it at night. Isn't it cuddly? Anyway. The last thing I want to say about emulation is on the Nintendo Switch, there are some games that are rare and obscure to buy in real life. Neo Geo games, arcade shooters, things like that. And most of these games are like $8. And you're not going to find Money Puzzle Exchanger or Magical Drop 3 or Twinkle Star Sprites for $8. So consider that if you're interested in just playing stuff. I think the real thing to keep in mind is having a general strategy for collecting games. Figure out what you're doing and what you care about. So me, I consider myself a generalist. Like anything really NES and up, that's where my nostalgia is, and I'm pretty open-minded to things. But there are people who do different things. There are people who say, I only do complete in box, NES, SNES. I'm a Sega Saturn collector or something like that. But understand that what you want to get is really going to determine what your budget is and where you're going to find stuff. If you say, I want to find Sega Saturn stuff, don't expect to find it at your yard sales. I mean, you might once in a while, but I mean, it's extraordinarily rare. It means you're probably going to have to spend a little bit of money to do this stuff. But I mean, if that's your goal, you should do that. But just keep that in mind when you move forward on that. I think it's really important to determine what you value the games at, as opposed to what the internet or a con or eBay or whatever values the games at. There are a lot of games that are $5 that are amazing. If you don't own Burnout 3 on the Xbox, go buy it, because it's a $5 game and it is as fun as anything that is out there. Meanwhile, Stadium Events is a $10,000 game and it sucks. So, you know, just keep that in mind. What do you value the games at? I personally extend myself on a few things. Sean knows that I bought JoJo's Bizarre Adventure at a pretty high price because I just don't find it out in the wild very much, but I wanted the game, so I went for it. What kind of personality do you have? Are you like really outgoing? Are you really going to engage with people? Do you not like to negotiate? You know, what kind of stuff do you like to do? And, you know, if you're not into those types of things, it might be difficult trying to gain dialogue with people and getting trust to talk about some of the strategies I'm going to get into. Never stretch yourself financially. Always protect your collection and stuff. These games don't really matter in the big scheme of things. Just do what's comfortable for you. Please, please, please don't stretch yourself. It kills me when I see somebody going to a video game dealer, someone, nothing against resellers or anything like that, but spending a lot of money on something that either they could wait on or just really don't need. So one thing I do is I keep an inventory. Everybody, who here collects games currently? Who here has an inventory that they know they can get if something happens? So I see some hands dropping. I would encourage everybody out there to take an afternoon, and I use Google Sheets, and because it saves. Yes. Oh, okay. Those are great apps, and your smartphone can really be your friend with this hobby. So I would really recommend you do that. How else are you going to know when you go out someplace if you actually have something? I mean, when you get to the point where I'm at in the collection, you see games all the time, and you don't know whether you have them or not. And it makes me feel both old and stupid. There's a lot of good apps, too. Make sure you take pictures if you have something really crazy. It's good to have that stuff, just in general. I do recommend doing research. So there's all sorts of information on what things go for on your smartphone. There's a price charting app for Android. I don't think it's on iPhone, but you can just go to the website. Game Value Now is a similar thing, and eBay sold listings. I mean, these aren't, you know, set in stone here, but it gives you an idea of what these things go for on the marketplace. Make sure you check out completed or sold listings on eBay and not what things go for, because anybody can list a common game for 10 times its value on eBay. Nothing is stopping you from doing that. It only matters what it sells for. So you want to also know how scarce something is. So how many people in this room have a GameCube? All right, keep your hands up. How many of these same people have Smash Brothers Melee? So it's not really that rare of a game, is it? And yet it's one of the more expensive games on the system at retail. And the reason is it's a very desirable game. It's a high demand game. It's a game that when people buy a GameCube, it's the thing that they want to get first. And Aquaman Battle for Olympus is objectively a rarer game, and it costs very little. But I'm not going to ask you guys to raise your hands if you want to buy Aquaman Battle for Olympus. You should really learn about the hardware too. Today one of the biggest things is getting a clean signal on a modern television. And if you learn about old hardware, there's oftentimes very easy ways to get a really nice, clean signal that weren't always there maybe 5 to 10 years ago. And there's a lot of good resources on all this stuff. And I would really encourage you to just use the internet. I use the site retrorgb.com all the time to figure out how to connect things. It's super detailed. Or ask people. You know, there's a lot of community out there. It's really important when you go out collecting to be nice, be respectful, communicate, and build relationships with people. First of all, I don't want to do trades with random strangers and stuff like that if everyone's going to be unpleasant. I mean, how is that fun? But more to the point, you know, it's going to give you opportunities. So if someone's giving you a good deal, let's say you're on Facebook Marketplace and somebody is selling you an N64 with 40 games for $50, you should be willing to meet them not anytime, any place, but you should be willing to make this as easy for them as possible. Be very nice. Just say, hey, I collect these things. This is something I like to do. Thank you so much. When can I meet you? Is this okay? I'm driving this car. This is what I look like. Oh, by the way, my friend is coming with me, so you're not freaked out or something like that. You know, just be as easy to them as possible. And there's a reason this matters, not just because it's, you know, you don't want to be a jerk. It will give you the best possible deals. And these are real things that happened to me not that long ago. So this guy was selling Lunar Eternal Blue, the strategy guide, with the strategy guide, and I just bought the guide from him, and the guy's all into these PS1 and PS2 games, and basically every couple weeks he's asking me like what extra stuff I have, and I trade him things, and it's super nice because I got Shadow Hearts from him, and he got some stuff from me. And had I not been a easy to approach, friendly, kind person, very accommodating, he wouldn't have wanted to do that. I go to this Persian buffet near me, and one time, thank you, Spider-Man. Can we have a round of applause for Spider-Man one more time? What a hero. Anyway, I'm in there, and I go there all the time, and I just try and be nice to everybody there just because I'm there all the time, and I would hate to be that guy. So anyway, I showed up at a yard sale one day, and there's just all these video games, and it's like, wow, Splatterhouse 2, and Marvel vs. Capcom, and all these great things. Wow, this guy is going to want a lot of money. And he says, you're the buffet guy. And I go, yeah, I'm the buffet guy. And the guy just give me all these deals just to take everything, and it was just because I was nice to the guy at the buffet one day, and he recognized me. These things do matter. The little picture there is a GameCube bundle I got from a lady who's retiring and moving, and you might not be able to see everything, but it's a pretty great deal. I mean, you could see Smash Brothers in there, there's Mario Kart, there's all sorts of stuff. It was very expensive at retail, but she gave me a great deal on it. And I met her at the McDonald's that she wanted to meet at, and I was super nice to her, and I chit-chatted with her, and I found out she had some computer problems, and I helped her with her computer problems. And then one day she called me and says, I found all these games, let me mail them to you. And she gave me Skies of Arcadia and all these other things, and she didn't charge me a cent. And she's just like, well, I thought you'd like this for your collection. But it was because I just kept I would say a generous mind, a sort of an open spirit to people, because these things do matter. I mean, I get a lot of my best things just from connections and things like that. Don't get emotional about something you see that's on your wish list. Most of the games that you guys want in this room right now, you can find. These are not rare items in the true sense of rare. This is not the United States Constitution. This is not the Ark of the Covenant. This is a copy of Chrono Trigger, which is really not super hard to find. So if somebody in the dealer's room is selling a copy of Chrono Trigger for way too much, I don't know if that would ever happen. Maybe wait. Maybe go on eBay if you just want the game. You could probably get it cheaper. So just be flexible. Keep an open mind. Don't get too caught up in things. If you're patient, you will find cool stuff. And you find opportunities to get cool stuff through trading and other stuff like that. So anyway, just don't get too emotional. I mentioned the hardware repair. We should definitely know how to do this. I'm not going to get into too many of these things, but make sure you get a game bit if you work with old consoles so you can open them up. They're really easy and super cheap. You can find them on Amazon. Easy mods like making a SNES play Japanese games. I mean, these things are very basic. That's sort of a good place to start. I want to learn how to mod stuff. Well, cut the tabs out of your SNES and make it play Super Famicom games. Is that okay? Okay. Move on and fix the reset button on a N64, which breaks all the time. And that's also super easy. Okay, you're comfortable with that? Now open up an NES and fix the 72-pin converter, which is not too bad when you get into it. And now once you feel really good, and then you can get out your soldering iron safely and not burn yourself, hopefully, and start doing solder jobs like RGB mods if you want. Now, I don't really do this stuff that much myself. I often hire people, or there's a shop near me that does a good job. But it's good to know some of these things, and I would say do that. So the famous story I have is my friend decided it would be so cool to put a mod chip in his PlayStation 1 in the 90s, and he destroyed his PlayStation 1 because he said, oh, soldering's really easy. Now in the 90s, we didn't have all these YouTubers to tell us what to do. But if you're ever in doubt, seek help. There's a really big community to help you guys figure out how to do this stuff, and I would encourage you to at least understand it. One thing you shouldn't do is assume. So if you're ever at a yard sale or flea market, or really a yard sale, and you go up and you just don't see anything, doesn't hurt to say, hey, you got any old games or old video games? And be specific, or say buzzy words, like say, you got Nintendo or PlayStation or Game Boy or Sega or whatever. So like, so the deal here, I paid $20 for all these PlayStation games, and I went to the yard sale and I said, oh, hey, good morning, how's it going? Do you have any video games? They said, no, we don't have any video games. We only have PlayStation. I'm like, all right, I'll take a look at the PlayStation games. But I mean, you have to say that stuff because people have these weird ideas. It happens very often. Know who you're dealing with. So, a store isn't going to really negotiate with you that much. In the dealer's room, sometimes they will actually. Like, I actually got a couple finds today. Usually it's if you buy a lot of stuff or if it's at the end of the con. Wink, wink. Tonight might not be a bad idea to start seeing if people are willing to move on things that have been sitting all weekend. If someone ever tells you, like, I got to get rid of these games, I'm moving, well, maybe it's time to negotiate a little bit if they're sitting on something, and don't feel bad about it. I mean, that's at least how I look at it. And I've got another thing about that we'll talk about later. But if somebody's asking way, way, way too much and it's not that special, I don't even bother. I just move on. So, I talked about the con stuff. Use the mobile marketplace apps if you're in a good place for them. I use OfferUp, LetGo, Facebook. I used to use Craigslist, not really so much anymore. There's this one that's called Nextdoor that I use. It's like literally your really close vicinity. And I found a top loader NES for 20 bucks that way. I couldn't believe it. And it was super awesome. But you have to be diligent. I mean, just because it's on a mobile marketplace app, the vast majority of stuff on here is overpriced, or you see some resellers like selling the same stuff over and over and over again. So you got to look over all the time. And this is sort of where you find good deals, but in a way, you're still putting in the effort and the work to get it, right? Yes, you might get the GameCube bundle for 50 bucks like I showed you, and that's a really great deal. But it took a lot of time ultimately to find that. There were so many things you click on and message a person, and is this available? Oh, it's already gone. Okay, well, see you later, or whatever. I mean, that's work in and of itself. So there is cost to this. It's not like this is super easy to do, and it's getting harder to be honest. Keep an open mind. So I said set goals, but be flexible. So I was never into Master System, and then this lady sold me these games for $5, and now I collect Sega Master System games. Because Phantasy Star is not an easy find game, and I was enchanted. I don't know Vectrex at all, and I was at a flea market, and this lady pulled out of her basement just boxes of boxed Vectrex games. I don't know where she found them. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know anything about these. I don't own a Vectrex. I don't think I'll ever own a Vectrex. It was a little before my time. And I bought them, and I found a guy in a Vectrex group near me who wanted them and gave me Dreamcast games for them. But I like Sega Dreamcast, and that worked out pretty well. So don't have a crisis of conscience over a good deal. So I think this may be a little more controversial. I hear people ask me this sometimes, which is that do you feel bad when you go and you find, like, once in a while, if you're really diligent, you will find an insane, crazy deal. Like, and it's not every year, but like maybe once a year with all the flea marketing and yard sailing and stuff I do, I find something that's just absurd. And this year it was a Sega Nomad. So I went to the guy, and it was on his table in the box, and I said, how much for the Sega Nomad? And he said, $5, and I said, here you go, see ya. Now, you could say, well, Ben, are you taking advantage of this guy? You know, he has this extremely valuable thing. It's not easy to find, and it's sitting at a flea market for $5 and all that. Well, you know, this guy was digging in a storage unit or something, or somebody's thing, and just got a bunch of junk out and is just throwing it out, and he didn't do any effort, and he didn't do any research, and they didn't put any effort, and they're just trying to flip things for cash. So you really shouldn't feel bad about getting a good deal. They could do this exact same thing, and they choose not to. So I don't think it's something to worry about. The seller offered a price, and I accepted. I think it's a little different if somebody says, well, what would you give me for it? You know, if this guy says, what would you give me for the Sega Nomad? And I said, $1, then I'm kind of taking advantage. Even then, though, with this guy, he could have done the research. They could have put the effort into it. There's lots of people at the flea market who do, sadly, and things can often be overpriced as a result. But you shouldn't feel bad just because you found a good deal. I don't know if you can really see this. By the way, if you email me afterwards and you want the slides, I can email them to you. Stuff I do personally, this is just me stuff, things I started to do that I like. I started making custom cases. I think it's the Cover Project. Really cool site. And I have a laser printer that they let me use at work, and I printed out Sega CD cases and cases, you know, things that I'm not going to find. and it makes things look better. And if you're gonna have, like, I have Shining Force CD, and I'm never gonna find the case and manual for it, I don't think. Anybody here want to give me one? So making that myself, I think, is fine. It makes things look better. The Game Boy Advance games with the DS cases is really awesome if you like collecting those, especially because Game Boy Advance games are so tiny and like losable that having those cases can look really, really nice. The way I collect, and I'm not going to say that this is right or wrong, for older cartridges, things, I don't get too into the boxes and manuals. Like, I'm not going to trifle about that stuff. But if it's a disc game or a DS game, I'm a little more picky. Even then, I sometimes take things loose if it's hard to find enough and I get a good deal. So if you find a controller for $1 and it's a first-party controller, you can just buy it because it's worth doing. I have bins of controllers, and my ex-girlfriend really hated it. But it's useful to have. I mean, it's nice to go in. These things break, and it's nice to be able to go in a bin and just grab them. I'm almost done, and then I'll do Q&A. As far as shops and retail, sometimes people think you can't find deals at retail. That's not true. The buy two get one free deals can sometimes be pretty good at these retro game stores. There was a store near me that was doing $1 PS2, Wii, Xbox games on this rack, and I bought like 30 of them. You can find some good stuff. I don't buy really old games at GameStop, period, because there's too many bootlegs. The one near me, I literally saw them on the shelves, and they weren't doing anything about it, so I just don't buy them there. Even eBay, so if you sort of game it a little bit, you can sometimes get a good deal. So sometimes they'll have like coupons, like 10 off 50. So if you have an expensive item, you negotiate it down, then get a coupon on top, then you can get a decent deal on something that maybe wouldn't be so easy to find. Other stuff I do, I always tell people I work with that I do this. I have coworkers who give me stuff all the time. When I go out flea marketing, I buy little trinkets and stuff from my game room. When I come to MAGFest, I love to buy art from the artists here. I think there are a lot of really talented people, and I like buying that stuff from them and decorating my game room with it. It's great. I'm super into color variants. That's something it could be fun to do for a collection. Like, I want to get all the different color N64s, stuff like that. Sometimes I buy imports over domestics for a variety of reasons. If you haven't really explored imports before, at least look into it. Super Metroid is cheaper on Super Famicom, and it's the exact same game down to the fact that you can play it in English. So, hey, if you don't have the game, you want it. I think the cover looks cooler, personally. You can do that. Castlevania 3 on the Famicom is a better version of Castlevania 3 than on the NES, my opinion. I don't really buy repros except the Mother 3 translation, so that's not me, but some people like it. I kind of am not into that as a thing. I'm not going to get into that too much. And if you really want to spend a lot of money, you can look into RGB upscalers and CRT Pro monitors and other things that are extremely frustrating and expensive and difficult. So now I will do questions, and we'll do the drawing a little bit later. But there's a little contact information. You can follow me on Twitter, Schmerls on Film, or I'm the Laura 610 on Twitch. And I play retro games and stuff like this all the time, and I love engaging with people and doing trades and stuff like that. So please make sure you follow me on that. And who's got questions? I saw some hands pop up. Yes.
Ever heard of E-Starland?
E-Starland. I have heard of E-Starland.
My PS2 controllers broke, and I went there to get them fixed, and they said, we don't fix controllers. Where can I go to get them fixed?
Good question. So first, it depends on what the issue is. So is it like, some of this may or may not be fixable necessarily, right? Like, not easily fixable. Some of this you might be able to do yourself. I mean, it depends on if it's just like a button's not working, you might consider opening up the thing and trying to solder it back on. That was my first solder job. I found a arcade stick, and the buttons weren't working. Like, it wasn't responding, and it was so cheap, and it was a big wooden arcade stick, and I just thought it was in great shape. So I brought it home, I undrilled it, I saw a wire that was loose, I put some solder on it, I didn't know what I was doing, and it worked. And for like a PS2 controller, I feel like that's a great project to try. I don't know of any other place, and this is why I recommend going to yard sales and flea markets and buying lots of controllers. So you don't have to worry about this stuff.
Yeah, also, E-Starland whoever told you that that they don't do controllers, that's not true. I've had one of my TurboGrafx, my main TurboGrafx control stick, the arcade stick, repaired to the faulty cable. You'd want to tell them that you want to speak to their engineer, because he's the one that is actually making the decision.
Okay, I'll try that. But I have another question.
Sure.
Ever played VHS games or laser games or cassette games?
So the question was, in case you couldn't hear it, VHS games or cassette games or laserdisc games. And yeah, I mean, so I remember a lot of different things. So I remember there was a lot of educational stuff that way that we actually had in school. And they never really worked right. And I mean, it's a medium that obviously sort of failed for a reason, I think. Because it's so prone to failure. The games and control schemes were not intuitive. They had these problems. Although some of the VHS board games and stuff are fun, like the Star Trek VHS game is pretty cool. Although I don't know if that's a video game necessarily. It's more like a board game with VHS tapes. So anyway.
What about Betamax games?
I don't know. I never touched a Betamax in my life. So yes, other questions. How about you?
Sure. So on the topic of insurance, do you recommend doing like a separate insurance like on your like a collection insurance, or do you like add it to your renter/home?
I recommend talking to an insurance person. I would just say ask the right questions. I'm not an insurance guy. I think if you have things that are very, very valuable, like you would insure your home or your apartment or whatever, I think it's a good idea to ask about it. I think if you have a mortgage and you have homeowners insurance, certainly a lot of it will be covered under homeowners insurance, especially if you have an inventory. This is why you have an inventory, by the way, so that you can make a claim on it. It's not an unusual thing to say, yeah, I had, like if you filed a home, you might not get everything back on it, but if you had a claim, like I have 500 video games and you had a list of those games, I don't think it's that weird to make a homeowner's claim on them if something like a fire happened. I don't think that that would be unusual. I don't think you'd need special insurance for that. But if you're concerned, talk to an insurance agent. Yes, sir.
So you like to collect games and like play retro games. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What is your opinion on like clone consoles? Like what Technicon does and what they do?
That's an excellent question, and so I use some of them. So my first recommendation, and the question was about clone consoles. What do I think about them?
You think they're good for people who are trying to get into retro gaming, or do you like want to only stick with the regular consoles?
So a lot of them come with qualifications. So I own a Retron 5. Anybody in the room familiar with a Retron 5? Yeah. So it has its advantages and disadvantages. Its advantages is it's functional, right? It works with a lot of different things. You can play a lot of different games, but it's basically an emulator. It has questionable origins if you're into giving people who write emulators credit for their work. But it works, and I'm not going to tell somebody, I have one, so I'm not going to criticize people for owning it. But it's not the best gameplay experience. On the other hand, analog, I own the Super NT. That thing is awesome for the Super NES, and it is my go-to Super NES solution, and it's really great, really great. My recommendation: if you find a clone console, you're interested in it, or you're interested in a specific console, like I want to play a Sega Genesis, or I want to play a TurboGrafx, or whatever. Look into what those options are, what they are, whether they're emulation or the system on a chip type. I know that's called, some people call it hardware simulation, the analog thing. I'm not a technical enough person to know the real differences. Or the original hardware. There's a lot of good options, and fortunately, the best thing about retro game collecting today is the amount of information out there. Yes, sir.
I can actually help with that. What analog does is they have a thing called an FPGA.
Yes.
Which stands for Field
Programmable Gate Array, yeah.
Now, the difference between what that does and what your typical console does is your typical clone console is trying through software to make an estimation of what the hardware is. With a field programmable gate array, you literally are turning that chip. You can read it in a hardware description, and it will become the thing you're trying to turn into. So
It's more of a clone.
It's essentially
Yeah.
a duplication
Yeah.
of the original hardware.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, sir. You had a question.
This is more of an opinion question, but you had stated about emulators beforehand.
Uh-huh.
I was just curious on your personal thoughts. So, where do you think is the crossing the line? Because you can't emulate modern day games. Like, how far back in the date range would you say is like certain generation of consoles is, hypothetically okay to
Yeah. So your question is what emulators, what generations are sophisticated enough for emulation?
Well, that are okay to kind of go that far.
The good experiences as a gamer.
Yeah, because
Sure.
like I have a friend and he was going through and possibly going towards craft games, but then he kind of turned away from it.
Uh-huh.
Meaning like modern day, like you could pretty much emulate like the games that are out for like PS4 right now.
Ah.
Crafted versions. And
Yeah.
that's like super illegal, but I know like emulation is legal. But
Yeah. I'm not gonna. I don't know about all the legal stuff, but like what I would say is that 8-bit stuff, 16-bit stuff, even PS1 emulation is pretty good. It's one of the reasons the PS Classic is such a shame that PlayStation emulation is there, and the fact that they did such a bad thing with a bad quality product for their fans is really a shame on a huge company like Sony. This isn't some mom and pop shop that just can barely scrape the resources by to release a system. This is one of the biggest electronics companies in the world. Soapbox over. As you can tell, that's my second thing about the PlayStation Classic. I'm really upset about it. No, I mean as far as emulation is concerned, all those systems are good. Keep in mind, though, that there are certain things that emulators will never do. So go down to the arcade room if you have a chance and go to that Cocktail Asteroids machine. And why can't you get what that machine does? Because it uses a vector monitor. And nothing will light up like that vector monitor in any other experience of Asteroids ever. So when that monitor's dead, and by the way, so it's 2018, in 20 years that monitor will be dead. 2019. It's 2019, jeez, well, even less time. Yeah. That thing will be dead, and you won't be able to experience like that. So it's worth going out and checking this stuff out, because it is going to die, and it is a weird experience going up and seeing that thing if you've never seen it for the first time and seeing the brightness that comes from it. It's just a different experience. In Sonic the Hedgehog on a CRT monitor, they designed the effect that the waterfall looks different on a CRT with those, like it's using the old crappy hardware in a way to create an effect which you don't see on an emulator, because an emulator is just saying, well, what's the game do? Or even the FPGA stuff. I mean, you can't FPGA a monitor. So just keep that stuff in mind too. PS2, I know the emulation is usually pretty okay. PS3, I know, is not there yet. I can't imagine PS4 being that good.
Wii and GameCube are both pretty
Oh yeah, Wii and GameCube are very good.
The Dolphin emulation.
Yeah, Dolphin's excellent.
And Sega Saturn could be done through Ubasa.
Yeah, I personally really want a Sega Saturn with the SD card thing so that I can do that, and I need to get a lot of money for it. I'd like to give some other people a chance. Well, I'm going to come around. Yes, you. Yes. No, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to.
So, how would you really rectify something collecting like you said, if someone wants to collect Genesis games or Saturn games, they want to do just one system. What do you do? Like, what's a good way to go about collecting for a genre per se? Like, you really want platformers, you really want role-playing games, you really want adventure games. That has a multitude of systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fine. I mean, I think the more specific you get about your collection, the more ultimately you're going to have to be willing to, especially if you're going for rare stuff, you're going to have to pay. Like, let's say, platformers, for example. So I'm going to be a platformer collector. You know what I want? I want Klonoa on PlayStation 1. So not the most expensive game, but I don't know what it goes for, maybe 40 or 50 bucks these days. I mean, that seems about right. So let's say that that's what it goes for. Well, you know what? You're probably not going to find it at the flea market super cheap. Maybe you'll get lucky, but most likely you're not. So you might have to go searching for a deal on eBay or at a con or something like that, or trade some stuff. One thing I would do if you're into that genre stuff, especially genres that maybe people are more willing to trade, like RPGs I know are like coveted and people never get rid of them, but like get games, other good games that you know that people like, and trade those. I mean, if you can get a copy of Smash Bros. Melee, somebody will trade you something for it because it's out there, or stuff like, it's always good if you can find things that somebody else will have interest in, because you might have a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Adventure on Nintendo GameCube, and a copy of Star Fox on the N64, and you might have a friend who's in the audience right now who has a copy of Ys 1 and 2 on the Nintendo DS, and you don't have that game, but he really wants Sonic Adventure, and you want to trade it, and you come up with a deal, but I knew that people like Sonic Adventure, and I have a copy of Star Fox, but people like Star Fox, and we were able to make a trade because I knew somebody would want it. And so I think as it pertains to like genre collecting, you can do something similar. I mean, if you find, really good fighting games, like if you find Marvel vs. Capcom, you could trade that for a good RPG. I don't think that's crazy. So, yes, Sean.
So, when you sometimes
I used him as an example, so I have to answer his question now.
So when you got I see you have bought random stuff like Vectrex when you don't.
Yes.
Know. But what is the most expensive thing you've probably bought where you had no idea this ever existed, but looking it up in front of someone's not going to be a good idea?
That's a tough one. If I'm going to spend money, I'm looking it up. I don't take risks on things that I am not, I'm not going to spend $100 on something if I don't think I'm going to be happy with it, or I don't know I'm going to be happy with it, I should say. There's always going to be other deals, but it feels pretty bad to spend money on something and then find out it's a waste. So one other little tip, and I didn't put in the thing, is that when you go to a yard sale or flea market or offer up and you buy something, make sure you check the game is in the case, because I hear a lot of laughing in the crowd. I'm sure it's happened to many people in the room, including myself, where you get home and the game's not there. And another reason to look out for that stuff. I think it's really hard to say. You had to stump me. You even said like last week, you're like, I'm going to ask you a question that's going to totally embarrass you on the panel, and there you go. Anyway, if I think of something, I'll bring it up before the end. Yes, sir.
On the idea of like the Super NT and like, I'm thinking on the subject of streaming retro games.
Uh-huh.
So you'd have to do an HD stream on that.
Yeah.
It's going to be an investment to get something like a Super NT versus something like a FrameMeister. Which would you recommend be the course of action?
There's a lot of options. OSSC is a little cheaper. So I have both a FrameMeister and an OSSC, one for one room, one for another. And the OSSC is better on lag, I think. And I like it, I think, now a little bit more than my FrameMeister. Both are good. If you're looking to stream, so the question is, I would first back up and say, well, I want to play SNES games on stream. What is the purpose? If you're going to just play SNES games on stream and you're not looking to show off your collection, you can emulate it, because the audience isn't really going to know. But if you're like, well, I'm speedrunning, then I think an OSSC or something with like a Super NT is a good option, or maybe more likely a FrameMeister. Well, I guess an OSSC or something would be fine. I think if you get into something where you really need the original equipment, then making the investment into either a FrameMeister or an OSSC is fine. I'm sorry, I should say, for people who don't know what an OSSC is, I keep saying this thing. It stands for Open Source Scan Converter. It's basically a little box that will convert different analog audio signals into 1080p or higher resolutions that modern TVs can accept. Your television's upscaler for old systems is bad because they didn't invest any money in them. And that's why old consoles look like crap on new TVs. These devices seek to solve that problem. The caveat is they're very expensive. And I would only use them if you really need the original hardware experience for the stream. I have done streams. I might stream tomorrow. I was thinking about streaming Yoshi's Island tomorrow, and I'll probably use my SNES Classic because I don't have to do shit for it. I can just hook the thing up, and I can play it, and it's fine for that purpose. In my retro room on my CRT, that's why I call my game room my retro room, my CRT monitor, I'll use the Super Nintendo because I'm up there and I'm using the CRT and all that stuff. But for a stream where I just need to get it set up and working and I don't want to deal with all the stuff, I'll use an emulator. So, yes, sir, the beard.
I know you said it's easy to mod your SNES to play Super Famicom.
Mm-hmm.
You said you could play Super Metroid in English.
Yeah.
Is that the case for all Super Famicom games?
No. This is why you should do your homework. But for Super Metroid, it's good. My first copy of Super Metroid was the Super Famicom one. My friend came back from Japan. He's like, I got you something. Where Super Metroids, I think, are basically in the pipes of water or something. But like, he just brought it back for me, and I was like, I couldn't believe how much of the game was the same. It was shocking. But certainly Fire Emblem doesn't work that way on Super Nintendo or Earthbound, sadly. Spider-Man, I'd be remiss if I didn't answer your question.
I was just curious what the rarest console that you had. I've been picking up ones ever since a friend of mine was like, hey, you babysit my birds. Have this laser active.
Wow. I don't think I have anything as rare as a laser active. And to be honest, the type of gamer I am and collector, and this is nothing to be negative about people who are into laser actives or 3DOs or CDIs, but I tend to collect for things that I'm personally nostalgic with. And, the Atari Jaguar, I don't like. And so I don't really go for it. I don't blame people for wanting to, but I don't. As far as me personally, what rare stuff I have a PC Engine Duo RX, which is really nice, that I got fully modded. That's an amazing system. That's pretty hard to find. I have 2 Neo Geos, so those are pretty hard to find. Rare. I say I want to qualify the difference between rare and expensive too. I think those are probably about the rarest I go these days. Yes, sir, Joust.
I noticed in your picture you had a collection of Sega CD and Sega Saturn games.
Yes.
Have you come across any with disc rot, and how do you think that will affect the future of collecting CD-based games, especially on the older CD system?
I've certainly encountered games that were messed up. I think it's a very big deal. I try my best to take care of these games. One of the reasons I say don't invest things that you're not prepared to lose is for that very reason, especially on disc-based games. I don't think it's that big of a deal right now for games that are in good shape. I mean, the PlayStation 1 games that I've had since they were out, like my copy of Lunar and my copy of Suikoden 2 and stuff like that, like these games I've had since they've come out, and I've taken care of them. I have not noticed one issue whatsoever. I don't keep them in like dank basements or something like that. They're on the shelf, they keep clean, all that other stuff. I don't scratch them up, and they seem fine. Will that last 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, 50 years? I have no idea. I have resigned myself to the fact that there's a possibility that one day this stuff could basically be junk and worthless. But I'm collecting because I enjoy the act of collecting, and I would really encourage people to leave with that. And that way, when the stuff goes away for whatever reason, let's say there's a fire, let's say you have to move and sell off your collection, let's say you have disc rot, that you feel like the process was worth it. The process has to be worth it for game collecting. But I think your concern's very valid. I would just say take care of your stuff and play. And this is why I say play your games if you have them. If you have these games, play them. Because you don't know when you're going to boot them up one day and they don't work. I mean, that happens sometimes, and it is sad. And we have a Viking funeral every time, and my neighbors don't like it. No. Who else has a question? Yes, I don't think I answered your question yet.
You said you like to collect the DS cases for the Game Boy Advance games?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that you can get deal or no deal for $1 from Walmart most of the time?
I see that a lot. Yeah, it's like a cheap ass gamer tip. Follow them on Twitter because you can find some cool stuff.
Do you think they will ever run out of that game?
I think it comes from a different universe where the laws of physics don't apply and mass can come from nothing. And all it does is output the picture of Howie Mandel on the cover of the Deal or No Deal case. I did know that. I've never had to do that, to be honest. When I had to go out and buy DS games sometimes, and to be honest, when you go out and buy someone's DS collection for $30, you end up with a lot of shitty games. And I cannibalize games besides Deal or No Deal because they're very available. And I don't actually do it to every game. I mean, and I don't do it with every one of my Game Boy Advance games either. But like Tactics Ogre, I wanted to put in a case, and I can't think of all the rare ones I've got, but like it's harder to find Game Boy. I wanted them to look nice, and so I put them in cases. I don't worry too much about it. They're pretty plentiful. I just want to make sure before I start make sure I get everybody who hasn't asked. Yes, you.
I was actually going to say something about the Game Boy Advance as well. Because, Proton John does a lot of streams and retro games, and he got into CD
It's an awesome system.
Yeah, he likes it because they're real compact.
Mhm.
He's got all these other games, and they take up all the shelf space, but then he's got all the PDA games on this tiny little car display thing.
Yeah.
They're little, like you said, the used PS cases if you want to look nice, but like just for stuff like just miscellaneous stuff, like little dust detectors on the bottom.
Yeah.
Those that they can fit in are. I found those. I got like a bag of them. I think like 15 of them.
There's all sorts of cool stuff like that. I bought the entire set of N64 spine labels that somebody printed off on eBay for like $10. Get it if you've got N64 cards. It's great. And you just put stickers on them so you can actually see what the games are when they're on yourself. Imagine that. Why would Nintendo think of that? I don't know. I buy the little plastic for the for old cardboard boxes. I buy the little plastic sleeves for them for like, what are they? I don't know, 50 cents, $1 a piece. Those are super cool. I'd recommend that. So, yes.
You mentioned the 72-pin controller for the NES. The 72-pin.
The connector, yeah.
I know, I words. You said you know repair versus replace. Are there good replacements, or is it more?
Oh, I mean, 72-pin connectors are very common. You can get them on eBay super cheap or anywhere else. Sometimes you don't even have to fix them. Like if you look it up, you can look on YouTube about loosening pins or tightening pins, I guess you should say, and you can just most of the time just pry them and then clean this one contact, and it'll work most of the time. I say that, but my friend Sean here, he brought an NES to my house the other day. I'm like, oh yeah, no problem, we'll fix this, and I couldn't get it working, so I had to look like an idiot. But but they're pretty easy, and there's a lot of tutorials about that stuff. Yes.
What about strategy guides or game manuals?
I love that stuff. Me personally, I'm all about it.
How do I get those? Like, if it's missing.
The manuals, it's just random luck. I found some Saturn manuals at a comic book store a couple weeks ago. I bought the Guardian Heroes manual for $1. I had no idea why they were selling this for $1. I'm like, I'll take it. And so that's just totally random, though. I mean, it's hard to find those sorts of things. Strategy guides, I find them a lot. You see them at Goodwill. You see them at yard sales all the time, used bookshops. I mean, they are very common, and I love collecting them. I love the art and everything in them.
Military PXs. If you have friends in the military,
My dad was in, and I never knew that.
they sometimes end up being a treasure trove of stuff from.
No shit. That's awesome.
I actually found. I wish I picked it up. I remember finding a first edition copy of Final Fantasy VII while I was in Okinawa.
That's awesome. Wow.
Didn't have the greatest hits, which,
So there you go. If you want Final Fantasy VII, go to Okinawa, Japan. Yes. I think did you have a question?
Yes. Similar vein of the strategy guys, how do you feel about collecting like demo copies or like advertising pieces?
I personally don't do it. Now, in my little boxes over here, I actually have some demo discs because I know people are into that stuff. And one of my tips is bring games that you don't really need anymore to cons, wink, wink, so that when people come to your game panel, maybe they take some of the stuff that you don't necessarily need. Wink, wink, I'll be around after the panel. Yes.
Do you have any? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Whatever. Go ahead.
Star Switcher experience.
I want to. I'm gonna get one soon. I haven't gotten it yet. I do it manually. It's a pain in the butt, but I'm gonna get one soon. Yeah, those guys. I've never met them, but they are very knowledgeable. Those guys. I highly recommend. That's My Life in Gaming. If you want to learn about SCART stuff, they are very good at explaining what they do. I watch their stuff and it's entertaining, and so I really enjoy that stuff. Yeah. Yes.
So I think it's pretty, universally accepted to like repair games, consoles, etc. How do you feel about repairing like manuals and boxes, like the cardboard box?
I never do that. I mean, like, maybe it's possible, but I would never. I'm not handy enough to do that sort of thing. So, what other questions do we have? You, sir.
So for when you're at a yard sale and you find games that have no prices marked, you ask what they want for it, and they just pull out their phone and scroll through eBay right in front of you.
Yeah.
Do you have a best practice for dealing with that situation?
Look at your phone. I mean, if they're gonna do it to you, do it with them. I think it's obviously a little gauche to go up to somebody, ask them what the price is, and then look at your phone. Like, let's say they go up to you and you say, how much is this PlayStation game? They say $5, and then you go and look it up on your phone, and then you go back. That's obviously a little odd, or not. I don't want to say odd. It's just a little off-putting, I think, to the seller. But if they're doing it, then you should definitely do it. But most of the time, and here's the thing: people who are gonna look stuff up on their phones, they're usually going to be the resellers typically. Most people who set up a yard sale are just like, I want to get rid of it. And that's why I'm pretty aggressive negotiating at yard sales, or whatever. But just be nice. That's all I would say. Be nice. And if you think it's too much, just say okay, thanks, and walk away. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, wait a second, what would you pay for it? Because they sometimes don't even know. And I wouldn't worry about too much about it. So, yes. No, you're good.
I do apologize for monopolizing most of your question and answer time, but I also make this quick. My friends and I have a rule where when we're doing multiplayer, no matter what, we will not ever compromise, and we will never do split screen ever. A couple dozen cubicles in my basement, and in each cubicle is a monitor, and hooked up to each monitor is a gaming rig, and one of each console I was able to get my hands on for each monitor. And I'm just wondering, how do I take game consoles and do a multiplayer game without having to worry about split screen?
I mean, the game has to offer it. So for Halo, it's fine. But if the game doesn't offer it, you're not going to get it. Or maybe some emulators might offer something like that. Like I know you have NetPlay on some of the emulators and stuff like that. It's 6:27. I think I only have 3 minutes left. So, I mean, I could just take the Ridley thing home. We don't have to give it away. Yeah. So why don't I do a drawing? Who would like to draw the winning ticket? Do we have it's too bad we don't have someone opposed to Spider-Man, like Venom here or something like that. All right, Spidey. All right, so wait. Make sure everyone sees this. Spider-Man's ticket is 0876698. If he pulls that same number, I don't know what we can believe in anymore.
I think you've got 698.
Wait, why am I closing my eyes? I have spider sense.
Well, they're all the same. They're all 698.
0876763.
Yay! Somebody all the way in the back. Awesome. Thank you. We can keep doing Q&A until they kick me out, but I keep in mind, as I said, you can find me on Twitter at @SchmurlsOnFilm or Twitch. I'm the Walrus610. I really like to engage with people. I like collecting. I like trading. I like talking to people. Stick around if you want. I brought stuff to trade. If anyone wants to take a look at it, it's stuff I'm not really too attached to. So, thanks so much. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you so much.